everybody's time. So we will go ahead and get started. We may have a few more join us as we're going along. And I just want to thank everybody for being here today for our doctoral discussions. And just so everybody knows, if you see some unfamiliar faces, Dr. Schmidt asked if some of his students could join us because they could benefit from what we asked him to discuss today too. So I said, the more the merrier. And so as they come on and you don't recognize them, they're part of the, I'm guessing, the veterinary program up in Amarillo, right? That you're up in Amarillo.
Yep.
Sure. So just real quick, Dr. Miller, do you want to, we are going to record. So is that okay with you, Dr. Schmidt? We're going to share
Absolutely.
with our students who are full-time teachers that can't be here during the day. So Dr. Miller is going to go ahead and start recording. And I just want to real quick tell you a backstory about our guest speaker today. I had him as an instructor during my doctoral program as my stats teacher. And I'm telling you, the reason why he popped into my head to present today was because he relieved a lot of my anxiety when I went through the program, because not only is stats hard, it was at a time when I lost sight in one of my eyes from a detached retina. And so I really had to stay off the computer and I had to stay in a prone position for weeks. And yet I still was able to get through the course because of his mentorship and his understanding of my situation and relieving the anxiety. He says, we'll get through this, Kyle. Don't worry about it. And so that's why I thought of him when I thought about this course. And I just wanted to share that with you. So I think you're going to like him as a presenter and somebody you can reach out to if you have some fears that you want to have settled in when it comes to stats. So with no further ado, unless Dr. Miller has something she wants to add quick before we get started, she's shaking her head no. Dr. Schmidt is a faculty member that has been with Texas Tech for quite a while. I'm going to turn the floor over to him and let him introduce himself. And if you got questions, let's try to save some of them to the end unless he wants to do it as we go so we can get the information out there. So Dr. Schmidt, please introduce yourself. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Kyle. You're very kind and very generous. Thank you, everybody over at Family and Consumer Sciences. Congratulations on this effort. The fact that you're spending time with people who are human beings that, just like anybody else, may have some concerns about statistics makes a difference. That sense of community, the sense of support, the sense of I know that I can look around and I can find somebody that I can trust to help me be successful is absolutely to be commended. So thank you for what you're doing and thank you for inviting me. So I've been at Texas Tech since 2010. I came in to the program pursuing something related to exercise and sports psychology. I found out that educational psychology really drew me in. And even though for the most part, in my experience, I had struggled with mathematics, which is a predictor to anxiety in statistics. You know, poor performances and previous performances in mathematics is actually a predictor of anxiety in statistics. And I had struggled with that. I found that if I put in the extra effort and if I surrounded myself with the right people, I could actually overcome some of that anxiety. Never become the champion in statistics, so I'm admitting that. I think statistics is truly more of a marathon than a sprint. Definitions you can learn, you know, sprint-wise. Statistics is something that takes an extensive amount of time. It takes an extensive amount of effort. And it also is something that truly never ends in terms of how much we can learn about it. So essentially what's going to happen in your experiences, and I know that there are people in different levels. So there might be somebody that's already taken a few stats classes. There might be some people that just enrolled in the program and that are looking at their first stats class. The reality is that you will begin with some of the basic, which is mostly descriptive statistics, And then you will begin to evolve into inferential statistics. And then eventually you're going to be looking at special cases in statistics where data doesn't behave normally. And so you need to make decisions about that. All of that can sound very foreign now, and it can actually increase your anxiety. So without further ado, let's dig into what this is, and let's look at some of the things that we can do to dispel fear and anxiety associated to stats. The way that I'd like to do this presentation is really focus a little bit on what the literature says. And I've provided you with a reference at the end of this presentation that I will send once we've completed it. There is a lot of research associated with this, but I don't want to make it too researchy where we sound like, according to and so forth. So it's going to be more of a conversation. You can interrupt as you wish. If you want to save questions for the end, we will definitely allow time for that. And then I'd like to share a couple of ideas. And I'm not necessarily saying my ideas, but maybe we can do around the room and see what the crowd has to say. So in general, the objectives are to gain a better understanding of statistics anxiety, specifically definitions, maybe again, not so scientific in the approach, but understand some of those sources, how it affects us, and how we can mitigate some of that anxiety. We also want to create a walkthrough, a little exercise in statistics, because we're looking for meaningful experiences and meaningful, successful experiences. Ran into a couple of people. I used to be involved in sports, and the tall guy walks into the room, and the automatic assumption is that they're athletes and that they play basketball. Sometimes I've run into people and they've said, I just never played basketball. As we develop, we may not be as coordinated or have some of the physical functions to perform successfully. And the expectation is that you need to be good at basketball. And because you fail, many times you walk off the court and you give it up. Same thing happens with statistics, right? So if we don't have those successful, meaningful experiences, there is a chance that we'll either move away from it. We will declare ourselves qualitative researchers, which is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And at 2022, we should celebrate every single approach to research, understanding that what we are trying to do through the research process is to answer important questions that hopefully will make us better as individuals and as a society. So the approach is irrelevant. I mean, the approach is a decision that you make. In the ideal scenario, you are making a decision on a methodology based on your effort to answer research questions in the most appropriate, most ethical, morally responsible, and empirical way. So if the decision is to seek a quantitative approach, then obviously we need to adopt and walk through statistics. And then we are going to look at some of the resources that are available online that really have made a difference in my life and that have been very helpful to me. And I also would like to introduce some strategies for thinking about these online resources, because sometimes we fall into the trap, and this happens to us in stats classes. We can walk through the motions and we can get the correct result, but we may not understand what it is that we just did. And so experiencing success by finding the right result or the correct answer is part of the process and the experience. Understanding how we got there, what we needed to pay attention to get there is more important. So we're going to do a little bit of that, and we'll pay a little bit of attention to that. So the truth is you are not alone, and maybe you don't need to answer with your hand up or with, emoji or whatever, but maybe in your heart, you admit that you are one of those individuals who experiences statistics anxiety. Typically what happens is there's a story behind the story. Who we are today in the face and, experiences that we are showing are one thing, but there's things in the background that have really formed us. We're not going to ask about that. Those stories are your stories, and we should be mindful of them and respect them. But you are not alone. The statistics or research suggests that on the continuum of extreme anxiety to mild anxiety, about 80% of students admit to statistics anxiety. 80% is a relatively large number, particularly in small classes. In general and in life and struggle with anxiety, at least one in five Americans right now express a degree of anxiety. And so the fact is that you are not alone. Let's understand this a little bit better. So related to statistics anxiety, there are some situational elements or items or contributors to statistics anxiety. There are some dispositional and there are also some environmental. So situational has to do with where you are in your program, for example. If you are a first-year student, if you have had previous bad experiences, if you have struggled academically your entire life. I know that I did. I was kicked out twice from the university, and I don't say that proudly, but that's my experience because of underperforming. My GPA was not good enough. The amount of classes that I was carrying. I transferred to a community college to make life better, and you know what happened? I got Fs at the community college, and they had told me, you're going to go to the community college. It's going to be a lot easier. I got a couple of Fs, and then I had to transfer those Fs. So those Fs sit in my transcript until today. So that was the experience. So in my head, I had decided that I'm terrible at this. I had decided that I couldn't do it. I had decided that those dispositional now, and these are all related to a large extent. Dispositional is our beliefs, and many of those are formed by our previous experiences, and that would be environmental, who we are, where we grew up, our nationality. Race and ethnicity has been found to have an effect. Women, according to the science, and I say this with a lot of caution, tend to experience higher levels of anxiety. We see that we have a greater and larger amount of women in our programs. So the demographics of education are changing. So now that we have some of the sources where this comes from, let's pay a little bit of attention to how it affects us. And so one of the first things it does is if we experience anxiety, and sometimes high levels of anxiety, it closes our interest or our ability to learn. So not that I want to bombard you with my personal experiences, but when I had enrolled in the doctoral program, I was cautioned that I was going to hate it. You're going to hate it. And so that was my bar of a successful performance. If I go to Texas Tech University to get my PhD and I hate it, I'm hitting the mark. And so I enter the first semester and I'm absolutely hating it. And so I said, hey, this is the right thing. I mean, I'm actually on the path that I was told that I would be on. So this is what I should be expecting. Well, that's not the truth at all. The truth is, you should love this experience. You have made this commitment to take on one of the more difficult tasks in academics of any. You are joining, that small 1%. And then even in that 1%, there is still a 1% who are really carrying the load, making a difference, influencing, answering questions, changing the world. And many of us, me, I have not, really changed the world. Maybe I've contributed to the experience of one or two students, and I'm happy and truly satisfied and gratified with that. But the fact that I hated it, and I was taking these research and stats classes, and I hated them, and I fear them, and my anxiety was so high. And then I walked into one of the rooms and one of the faculty members says, you are the worst. And so now I was absolutely here, the highest level of anxiety. and I was convinced that I was not going to get anywhere. Now I'm thinking, okay, so what are the alternatives? And I'm thinking, I've got to start filling out applications at Walmart, because I'm not gonna be able to do this. So it really closes our, reception to learning, our perceptions of learning, and really closes us down. Sometimes it affects us emotionally, psychologically, and even spiritually. Low performance in examinations. So this high level of anxiety in statistics also causes us to perform lower in stats classes, but also in other courses. It causes us to procrastinate to enroll. I'm going to kick this class to the end of my experience. It's the last class that I'm ever going to take. I'm not going to take this first. I'm going to take it only when I take, an extra credit or one extra credit. And so that could affect how we structure our enrollment. And may affect other learning, which kind of reflects the first thing that we said. I mean, it's going to affect your learning and statistics, definitely, but it also may affect other learning experiences. And of course, the fact that it affects us physically, so tension, headaches, and so forth, will contribute to that overall negative experience. So what do we do? How do we mitigate this? How do we change this? What are the possibilities? Can we? And the truth is that we can. And there are things that we can do personally. And we're going to walk through some of those successful experiences in just a second. But in many cases, it also falls into, and this is where I'm honored and touched when Kyle said that in his experience, he felt that I had an effect. And I feel, that's an absolute honor. And it's actually very touching as well. But the fact that what I was doing really was trying to replicate some of what the recommendations in the science are. Because the experience of the student in statistics will be largely affected by the instructor in the course and the expectations in the course and the approach by the instructor. And so the first time you walk into the class and the instructor says, you know what, we're in this together. I believe in you. You can be successful. I have struggled with this in the past, creating that personal connection, that this is not a robot or a computer, but another human being that is sharing or has shared your experience. Then that already creates one item in terms of addressing faculty dispositions and addressing statistics anxiety. Then there are other things that we can do in these classes based on science. One is, do we really need time tests? How about those multiple choice, and I'm sorry, maybe I need to move. No. So how about those multiple choice questions versus exercises? So I've taken the multiple choice question. I'm just going to throw one of the easiest questions. Somebody says the sample size increases, what happens to the standard error? Or the standard deviation, how is it affected with sample sizes or variance or variability in scores? And all of a sudden, you're sitting there and you have alternatives to answer. Multiple choice questions largely draw on memorization rather than on critical thinking. So exams that are mostly multiple choice questions about statistics can be problematic versus the exam that is simply a walkthrough and an exercise. Perhaps it's even open book. Perhaps you can use outside resources. And if it's not timed, performance of those exams eases up anxiety and performance actually goes higher or increases. So it's really about faculty dispositions, and it's really about our approach on how we're assessing the statistics. Now, somebody might argue, hey, Marcel, yeah, but if we test with open book or with resources, students are not going to be able to learn, or they need to demonstrate the learning. But the reality is this: I don't know any researcher that doesn't use a resource to help themselves in research. Now, if anybody is doing that, they're probably not doing it in the best way that they can or that they should. We base ourselves on the literature. We look at methodologies, we replicate methodology, we learn from errors, issues, and situations. We study and we read the limitations of the study to understand what people had to overcome. So I was actually reading about statistics and anxiety, and somebody said international students struggle with, but they had only had a small sample of 10 students. Well, now in the limitations, it says we had a small sample. Did you correct? Did you use a correction to address small samples in your exams or in your statistical analyses? No, we didn't. Okay, that's the limitation. Can I trust those findings and results? We need to trust them, but we have to use a grain of caution because maybe it's something that we can't necessarily generalize. And so resources or outside resources are real, and in our experiences, we should be drawing on them. So anyway, I wanted to create just a successful learning experience. This is an exercise that I do all the time. I do it because I enjoy doing it. It helps me learn. It helps me conceptualize. It helps me make decisions. So if I say something that's a little bit beyond what you have experienced yet, I apologize. I'm going to try to go as simple as possible with this. And some people have seen me do this or work with this. And so I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. And let's just do a very quick around the room. Are we doing okay so far? Does anybody have any questions or comments that you'd like to share? Have we increased anxiety or probably at least connected with a few things that you have experienced? Have we touched your heart a little bit? Okay, very good. Hopefully in a positive way. So I'd like to open up now an Excel file that I've just created. And let me know, please confirm that you can see the Excel file in 2 seconds. Can we see that now? Thank you, thumbs up. Thank you, Dr. Miller. Thank you, everybody else that responded. So really what I did is I came back out here and I created a Qualtrics survey. And so I created the survey, I asked a few questions, and then I simulated responses. So one thing that experience does for me, it helps me think about data, and it helps me think about the different levels of data. So we understand that there is categorical data. We understand that there's continuous data. Within continuous data, we understand that there are different levels even within that. Right? Ordinal, so first, second, third, ratio, etc. And so creating a survey and manipulating data helps me make a decision about the types of data that I have and how I can manipulate it. And perhaps, and this happened to me when I was coming into the programs, I'm thinking, oh, I got to get those statistical packages in the software and it's going to be expensive. And it's going to be hard, right? It's going to be super hard. So we were using the College of Education SPSS, which is more of a point and click type of approach to analyzing data. I know that some programs are now adopting R because it's a free resource, it's an open resource, but it's a little bit more problematic. It requires a little bit of coding, but there are some graphic user interfaces that you can use that can simplify that process. But there was also this concern about, well, some other programs are using SAS and, I still don't have access to those and so forth. The reality is that you have on your computer, if you have the Microsoft Suite package, one of the most powerful tools, and that is Excel. Excel and learning Excel is going to make your life so much easier in general. So I would encourage you to start playing with Excel, learn Excel, break it up. add data, play around with it, do what you need to do. But this right here is probably the best tool. So in my experience, what I did is I started creating formulas in Excel that would respond to the questions in the book. And so I had to think through each one of the steps to get it done. Then I figured out that, you know what, I don't need to think that much because Excel can do it for me. So, for example, here we have on column A, we have some categorical data where we have yeses and nos. And then on most of these right here, I said, my statistics anxiety stems from previous experiences. I hate numbers, and I just made these silly things up. I'm not sure. So I just don't know where it comes from. I just know that I have it. I haven't really been able to put my finger on it. Then I said, how many credits are you enrolled in? Because these have been found to be predictors of statistics anxiety. So if you're carrying a super heavy load, this is going to increase your statistics anxiety. And then how old are you? It has nothing to do with anything. That's not necessarily a predictor of anything. And so, but it's just a question. I just needed an extra row with numbers. So Excel, this is your friend. Excel has opportunities for you to do some descriptive analyses. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a filter on this. So now we've got these little triangles over my first row, which is my label row. And what I can do here is I can actually sort from smallest to largest. And this is just something that you want to play with, because in descriptive stats, we really want to understand some of these conventions. That's a silly exercise. That really doesn't tell me that much. I can also understand what the average is, or I can simply by clicking on this column, we can figure out what the average is. So on the bottom right corner here, I can see the average. That might be too small to see, but we're going to get to this in a different way. I can see the count. I can see the sum of these values. Well, that's not necessarily helpful to me yet, but I can do some other things. Now, for the most part, if you have never done this, there is one step in between before you can analyze data on Excel. You want to come down here to your options. You want to select from your add-ins, and it's different for Apple users or Mac users. And you want to look for analysis tool pack, and it's already here, I already have it in. You want to then click on go. It's going to create this little box, and you want to make sure that analysis toolbox is checked. So the approach is slightly different in Mac or Apple, but if you do that, it will give you the analysis tool pack on Excel. Now, for the most part, you can conduct any type of statistical analyses without some of the higher levels. So you can create path analyses. You might not be able to create structural equation models and so forth, or even factor analyses. But this is going to give you the opportunity to do on your computer some of the basic analysis, inferential analyses, so regressions, ANOVAs, t-tests to determine differences between two groups, paired t-tests, one sample t-tests, etc. So let's go ahead and click on OK. So what happens is if I click on data up here on Excel, on the far right end of the working pane or the ribbon, I can see data analysis. Can we see that? Can somebody just on that if they can see it on, at least on my screen? Maybe you don't see it on your computer yet if you haven't installed this, but if you can see it here, that's important. So I'm going to click on data analysis. So that I can't make this little box bigger, but I can tell you the first line says ANOVA single factor, ANOVA two factor with replication, ANOVA two factor without replication, correlation, covariance, descriptive statistics. So every research study needs a section on descriptive statistics. How many participants you included, what the age of the participants was, what the standard deviation of that age is, just to understand the variance or variability in those scores. We also need some descriptives and some bar charts or some graphs that visualize some of this data. So I'm going to simply select descriptive statistics. I'm going to select just this small array here, and you can tell that I've already been playing with this because it's selected this. But let's just go ahead and replicate that exercise. Now I've selected the input range. I have said to Excel, I've got labels in the first row, and then I have said, I'd like to see this output on a different page. And so I have clicked on this box that says, give me the summary statistics for this. I could ask for a few things, but I'm okay with summary statistics, and I'm going to click on OK. So what happened on this next page, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you. What happens on this next page is now we have, for each one of the columns that we have selected, we have now the mean, the standard error, the median, the mode, the most repeated number, right? The standard deviation, and we have measures of central tendency that include kurtosis and skewness, right? We're understanding what the data looks like. So there are some measures, and you can look these up in the book. There's some parameters for certain values. Beyond a certain value, your data starts to either be skewed or kurtose. We have the range, the difference between the largest value and the smallest value. The maximum is 100 in this case, the minimum is 72. We have the sum and the count, which we probably don't need, but the fact that I selected at least 30 almost gives us a little bit of normal distribution. We see that we don't have major issues with that. So that's one exercise. The beauty of this is that you can simply take this, copy this, and this is one of the experiences that a lot of people have struggled with, taking this from a document and then having to create it inside your research. Let me know that you can see a Word document that has actually entered the screen now. So if I simply copy pasted this into my Word document and I double clicked on this and I said auto fit to window, I still have to play with this a little bit to an extent, but for the most part, this is an APA table. And if I insert the caption for it, if it's a table, it's going to be populating in the top. So I'm going to say descriptive statistics of the sample. So please excuse me, I got stuck right there with the narrative. So now we have it up here. I have to modify this a little bit. It's not italicized, it's not in blue, so I have to change the colors on it. And then of course change it to Times New Roman. Then there's ways that you can actually change that, but now you have an APA formatted table coming out of Excel. Anyway, so couple of things here. If you don't understand what the mean is, you can resort to definitions from a book. Now you understand in your descriptives that you have just run with 3 clicks on this data sample, you have that data available to you without having to do an incredible amount of effort. Next thing that I can do is, and I'll just demonstrate this as an example, I'm going to run a regression on this just to show you that some of the analyses that appear to be so far away from you are actually at your reach on a free tool. And so what I'm looking for now is a regression analysis, and in a regression analysis that we understand that we have a particular outcome that we try to understand what is in general a predictor of that outcome. So if we said statistics anxiety may be predicted by how many credits I'm taking, by the fact that I've had very negative experiences in the past, then we can actually create a model that predicts that. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my input range and my so input for the Y, which is going to be my outcome, and input for the X. And so I'm going to say for the Y, and I'm simply going to select up to, let's say, I think I'm at 22 there. So I'm going to select, you know what, I'm even afraid of doing that. So let me just go ahead and try to select everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this column here. And please, by the way, if I'm saying anything that's just way outside, or if there is no interest in doing this, we please let me know. or if you are curious about this as an opportunity for something that you'd like to replicate, then we can continue. I just don't want to get lost in something that I get super excited about, but may not mean anything to you now. How do we feel about, should we try this or should we just give it up? Okay, I got one nod. Thank you. And so that's that. And so let's go ahead and let's just use one or two predictors. In this case, I'm going to use these two. And then I'm going to say, I've got labels on the top. I'm going to ask that this come out on a different worksheet. I'm going to add some residuals. I like to look at the standardized residuals. I like to look at the plots and the line fit plots. And maybe I need some normality plots as well, just to understand how the data is behaving. Okay, so now, and I'm going to make this a little bit larger for you so that you can see it. I have actually run a regression analysis on statistics. I thought I needed specialized software to do this. I thought this was going to be so difficult. I thought it was going to be impossible. I thought this was out of my reach. But you know what? With 3 clicks, we were able to actually conduct a regression analysis with everything that we need associated to this. So you can look at your summary stats right up here. And again, we can copy this, open up our document that we just created, run down, and paste it. And again, we simply say auto fit to window, and now we have a perfectly formatted APA table that describes or gives us an idea of what this model looks like. We can see our multiple R square, we can see the R square, we can see basically essentially by this model that very little variance is explained in any of this. And again, I created some random variables. We have standard error, observations 100. You can get rid of the things that you don't need, simply deleting the rows, and then of course adjusting the table. But anyway, if we get back to this, then we have our ANOVA table. We can see the level of significance at 0.05. This is 0.9, so not even close, right, to the level of the significance that we had declared. We have our F ratio, the sum of the squares for the residual, the regression, the total, and so forth. So if there was anything in this model that was significant or interesting, we have our coefficient table, and we could actually chase it, and we could look at this. Is this, if we're looking at the p-values, is I hate numbers predictive of my level of statistics anxiety? Well, no, it's not. This is not even close again to 0.05, and we're describing this, in very broad terms. You'll get to, have a better understanding of this in the future. And then, of course, if we come out here to the side, we see our normality plots. Is our data behaving the way that it should? And then we can actually take some of this and modify it and edit it. We can copy paste this into our document again. So anyway, that was just a small exercise in a meaningful experience. I would encourage you to start playing with Excel. There are some online resources, I'm going to get to that in just a second, that are important and meaningful. I'd like to share at this point one of my favorite online resources if I can. And I want you to listen to this presentation because this person gets it. This person is not presenting to make money. They're not presenting because they feel that they are the authority in statistics. This individual, out of the entire universe of videos about statistics on the internet or available elsewhere, this person is doing it because they want to help. And hopefully this comes across in this presentation. Please tell me that you can see a YouTube screen. And hopefully I don't need to do anything with the sound. So I'm gonna click on this, and I have the captions on. Hopefully you can hear what this person has to say. And then I want to explain why I recommend this resource.
Dr. Schmidt, we're
Yeah.
not able to hear anything from the video.
Thank you,
Well,
Minerva.
I can't. I'm not sure about the others.
I can't hear it either, Minerva. Thank you.
I apologize about that. I'm going to share this resource and I will allow you to visit it.
Yes.
I'm not advertising for anybody. I simply wanted to demonstrate that there's an individual that says, if you are struggling with statistics in a class, I want you to know that I care about you, that people care about you. I want you to know that you've accomplished significantly up to this point, and maybe you're just at a point in your history, in your timeline, where you've hit a little bit of a rough patch. And so the recommendation is, let's work together through this. So this individual and this resource does one thing that others don't do. And that one thing is he explains how, but also explains why. And the why, again, is so much more important than the how. Both are important, but you understanding the why is going to make an absolute difference. Thanks for the thumbs up, Kyle. And then, of course, he goes on to teach with graphs and breaks everything down into you. So when you were looking at that normal distribution curve and it made no sense to you, now you have a very clear explanation of when you look at that normal curve, or if you're looking at sampling means within a distribution, now you have an example of that and so forth. So anyway, I don't want to spend too much more time.
Can I interject here?
Yes, please.
Dr.
Thank you.
I want to say that those were the same videos that you recommended to us in the course when we were going. And so when I went down to do my qualifying exams, I think I reviewed these every night, at least one of the series, just to prepare myself for the qualifying exam. And it was super helpful for knowing the process, because I didn't know what my questions were going to be. And Dr. Schmidt's the one that developed them. And so I thought, well, that's going to weigh heavy off, what he used as his resources. And so it was very helpful to go through those videos and just watch them right before the qualifying exam. So it was a great resource. So I just wanted to put that plug in there too.
Thank you, Kyle. I had to take off my hat out of respect for that. I appreciate it very much. And if that was helpful to you, great. There is another resource on the screen. Please let me know that you can see that. So thank you. So in the past, we had decision trees. And decision trees mostly came in paper form. And you had to follow these very complex structures of first question is, how many outcomes do you have? Are they categorical or are they continuous? How many predictors do you have? Are those categorical or are they continuous? Are they multiple? Are they the same? Are they repeated? And so it became a very complex and very convoluted process of making a decision. I found this resource. I'm not advertising for it. I don't have a relationship with whoever created this, but I found this to be very helpful. The question is, which statistical test should you use? And sometimes we're looking at the data and maybe your advisor said, you know what, clean this data out, run some, descriptive, and then throw some inferential. I want to see if there's a difference between these two. And you walk out of the office and you're scared to death. You have no idea what you want to do. And you needed somebody to help you make a decision. Obviously, another human being is a great resource, but if you're struggling with that and you want to help yourself in a way, this stats flow chart makes a difference, and it's been helpful to me. Which statistical analysis should I use? I click on this and it says, how many outcome variables do you have? And I'm going to say I have one, right? So I'm mostly at the univariate level. You could be at the multivariate level, and so you might click on two or more. So I'm going to click on one. Now it says, dear user, is it a continuous outcome or is it a categorical outcome? I'm going to say it's a continuous outcome today. How many predictors do you have? And I'm going to say, you know what, two or more. You probably already think, or you probably already figured in the direction that I'm going. Are they categorical predictors? So are they yes, no answers, or boy, girl, gender, or race? Are they continuous? How old are you? How many credits are you taking? What level of statistics anxiety do you experience from 1 to 100? Or maybe both. Just to make this simple, I'm going to say these are continuous, kind of like the exercises we said. Okay, Here's a recommendation: multiple regression assumes data meet parametric assumptions. Okay, so this is the why, right? It's not saying just run out there and run this analysis. Assumes the data meets parametric assumptions, that they're normally distributed, that they are linear, that there are linear relationships. And then there's going to be some other elements. There's going to be some elements of homogeneity or variance. If it's regression, there's going to be some elements of multicollinearity, autocorrelation that we need to pay attention to. But those are assumptions that you're going to pay attention to a little bit later. And then it explains and it says, hey, you can do this in R, you can do this as SPSS, you can do this in Stata, and it kind of tells you how to do it. And it kind of walks you through. I found this resource to be absolutely very helpful in my experience. So I want to share that resource with you. So we have talked, and let me bring my PowerPoint presentation up to the screen one more time. And thank you for allowing me to share that with you. Presentation mode. Oh, down here. So we did a little bit of walkthrough. We talked a little bit of that, and we shared this resource. The other thing that has been very helpful to me, but takes a lot of time, is my experience with Coursera and edX. Let me share again. And I'm gonna have to, somehow I close this, but Coursera and edX are what they used to call MOOCs. So they're online available resources that are free. And you can search for the different types of courses that you're looking for. In this case, I'm looking for something related to statistics, and it'll open up all these courses. And there's a list of courses. If you notice where these have been developed: Stanford University, University of Michigan, Johns Hopkins University, University of Amsterdam, Duke University, some of the top level universities in the nation have made these courses available to us. And so we can click on, for example, Introduction to Statistics. Let's say that I haven't taken that course yet, but I want to get a little bit ahead. So in the summer, I'm actually going to practice. So I'm going to look at this course available from Stanford. I'm going to read through it and notice this box right here in the middle: enroll for free. So you have availability to a course from Stanford University on Introduction to Statistics that is available to you for free. If you want to buy a certificate that you just want to hang on your wall eventually, congratulations, you can do that. I wouldn't recommend spending the money, particularly as a student. You may not necessarily want to make that investment, but I'm going to enroll for free. It says, if I want to purchase a certificate for $79, I can do that. And again, I'm not advertising for this. I'm only telling you that I found this to be incredibly helpful. Start learning. You can do this at your own pace. And then it allows you, access to all the information. You can download the information that they have in here. You can download the examples. You can download the videos. They are transcribed, super easy access. So Coursera and edX are changing education. They're becoming invaluable resources. And I have used this to help my experience, and I'm only sharing it because of that. And again, no other relationship to edX and or Coursera. If you ever want to learn a little bit more about statistics anxiety, and if you wish to pursue it as a line of research, if you search Anthony Onwebuzi, he's from England, I believe, originally Nigeria via England, and then he ended up, out of all places, at Sam Houston State University. I had a chance to visit with him, connect with him, and he was a scholar there for a long time. Now he's at the University of Cambridge back in England. And this person has, I'm impressed by that. He has an extensive line of research related to statistics and anxiety, has spent a lot of time. He actually created in 2010 a review of the literature. And the beauty of the review of the literature is the last section is usually, where are the gaps and what else can we or should we learn about this? And he makes recommendations. So we really haven't paid that much attention to graduate students. We haven't really paid attention to demographic information. We haven't really developed instruments that measure statistics anxiety. It's a very difficult construct. Many times they are related. So it's not very discrete that you have statistics anxiety because of previous experiences, which are those environmental or those situational experiences, but they overlap with dispositional. So those previous experiences may be affecting how you feel and your self-confidence or self-efficacy for performance in statistics. They're not so discrete. So people have struggled to create instruments that measure statistics anxiety. But that's a gap in the literature, something that you may wish to explore. Other things that they haven't paid too close attention is statistics in different programs. And then yes.
Should we be seeing your PowerPoint?
I'm so sorry. Maybe I should have done
There we
this.
go. Thank you.
This is the reference, and this is attached, and I will send this out to you. Onwe Boozy and this team in 2003 developed this. There's a follow-up in 2010, but this is pretty comprehensive. In 2003 sounds like a long time ago. This has been cited over 700 times. So some people have actually addressed some of those gaps, but I would encourage you to pursue this article, read it through, read the gaps. And if this is a line of research that you're interested, take it 100 miles an hour, obviously with the consent of your advisors. Don't just listen to me as a recommendation. Or if this is something that you wish to pursue on your own as a line of future research, definitely. Opportunities about at Texas Tech. You have the graduate research, poster coming up. I saw the advertisement the other day. I don't know exactly but I think it's a graduate research contest or competition or fair, and there's opportunities for you to present locally, and as you develop this over time, even nationally and so forth. So, with that said, at about 12:52, I think I've talked too much, and I'm sorry if I exceeded what I should have talked. I probably should have listened to your voices, which are probably a million more times important than mine. But if we have anything that we'd like to say, address, add, I would absolutely love to listen to you and to hear you.
I have a question, Dr. Schmidt.
Oh, thank you, Marcelo. Thank you yourself.
Oh, Marcelo. Well, first, thank you for showing this to us. I'm actually using the Fields decision tree for my mixed methods class, and Dr. Onwagbuzi is also a mixed methods guy, so I'm very familiar with him. My question is, I've come across the STARS or SAS. It's called the Statistics Anxiety Scale.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. What are your thoughts about that? Because for some reason I can't find it online for free, and I was hoping we could use that to assess ourselves as well, and if it's valid for us as education folks.
Thank you. And I won't specifically speak about the STARS. I don't have the authority to do it in terms of my knowledge and experience with. So I don't want to share an opinion that may be limited by my knowledge, but I think that you've hit a couple of things on the nail. I will say something in general about instruments that are out there for sale. So there are organizations that profit from collecting data, analyzing the data, and creating reports for you. So many times those organizations will not share their instruments freely. They will create a report and they profit from that. Nothing wrong with that. And sometimes they're very helpful. There is a social emotional intelligence team that makes a lot of money selling this to the schools, because many schools have been promoting and pursuing social emotional intelligence. So they pursue it, they sell it, they make money out of it. So they don't share the instrument with you so that you can use it. In the case if in your experience you have not been able to find this freely available, then there's a chance that behind that there's somebody making a decision that they are going to use this for their research, they're going to profit from it, they're going to sell it, and they're going to collect data that way. I will say this, and then you've hit it on the head. Instruments that are valid and reliable are those that you wish to pursue, particularly for your research. if something has been used in the past and it's not valid and reliable, one of the things that happens is that you can't really trust your results. And so I would encourage you to only select those tools that declare that they're valid and reliable. Usually you will see a Cronbach's alpha or other measure of reliability associated to it. And there will be something, in the case of Cronbach's alpha, which is the most common measure of reliability on a test, it'll be just the alpha symbol equals, and then it'll suggest a coefficient. And then there's a scale that helps you to interpret that if it's highly reliable or not as reliable, depending on that coefficient. So a low value is going to be that maybe not as reliable. So those are things that you want to pay attention to. And so I feel that I'm echoing some of what you have already expressed. I congratulate you on your approach and how you're thinking about this, without caution. And I will do a little bit of research on my own to see if there is access or availability to the STARS instrument for anxiety in statistics. Thank you, Minerva.
Thank you.
Tuliao. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this right here is
questions.
Yeah, thank you.
I said, do we have any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Well, if not, we want to thank Dr. Schmidt for his time. If everybody throw up some clapping hands, we appreciate your presentation and the time that you gave us today. Before we sign off, I want to see if Dr. Alexander or Dr. Miller have anything to add to the group before we cut out.
I'd just like to thank you for being here today. You've done over the years such a great job of supporting the students in our program, and this is another example of that. We so miss you on main campus. I know that you're being successful up there in Amarillo, but I did tell Dr. Robertson, oh, I wish he was still teaching. Because I know our students like Kyle, Dr. Robertson, as one of your former students, really benefited from your knowledge and expertise. But thank you so much. And I've made note of all these resources that you've mentioned, and we'll be sharing them with our students in some way or another.
I'm getting older, and with that, a lot more emotional. So those kind words just touch me in the heart in a special way. If I can be a resource to anybody, obviously, I usually consult with advisors, so I'm not just, walking around providing free resources, going rogue, essentially. But if there's ever, questions that I can answer or be helpful in, please consider me a resource. I think that's the one good thing that I'm good at, helping. And I'm a lot better at helping than I am with statistics, to be honest with you. So I need to make that disclosure.
Well, we appreciate you for that. And so if you'll send me that PowerPoint, we'll push that along with the recording to our students who couldn't join us today. So once again, thank you for your time, and all of our students and faculty that joined us too. Thank you for coming on board. And I think most of us have back-to-back meetings this afternoon looking at the calendar. I do have to get off myself too. So we'll just adjourn here, and everybody have a great day, and hopefully the weather doesn't have everybody too bogged down. So goodbye, everybody.
Hi, thank you.
Goodbye.